We're going to go ahead and install Vertica now. We just downloaded a copy from the website, the trial version of Vertica. So I have on here the RPM file. You can see Vertica version 9.02 is the version that I downloaded. Now I've got a cluster set up. It's a 3-node virtual machine. So it's three different IP addresses. I've already installed the OS on these. So at this point, they're just clean machines. We're going to go ahead and install Vertica. And look at the RPM. You can see that it's a single file install. This RPM can be installed in the cloud, can be on-premise, on physical hardware, virtual machines. You can put this on a laptop. So a lot of different places, as well as a lot of different OS support. And it's all covered in the documentation. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the RPM command to install Vertica. So it's a single command. So it's RPM uppercase U and then VH, and then I type in the name of the Vertica RPM. So that single command, it doesn't matter which of the nodes I'm on as well. So I could be on any one of my 3 cluster members. They all will act exactly the same. There's no leader node in a Vertica cluster. So the RPM is installing now. By default, the files that are being currently installed from the RPM are going into /opt/Vertica. So all of the Vertica software and the binaries, that's the default location that's being utilized right now in the RPM installation. Okay, it just finished, but I really want to take and include my other 2 nodes into this Vertica cluster. So I'm going to run a command. It shows me an example here, the install_Vertica command, but we need to add several command line options to that. So to start with, here's the opt Vertica bin install Vertica, and then I need to put in the IP addresses of each of my cluster members, including the member that I just installed here. So adding the cluster members is the -S, and there they are. So there's the three different Vertica clusters that I pre-installed. The next part of the command is the RPM command. So it'll distribute the RPM from this node to the other 2 nodes that we're going to build the cluster. So it's a -R and then the RPM that I just used previously. So you can see the Vertica 9.02 RPM that I had installed up here, including that now in the command line to do the install Vertica, really for the other 2 members. The next part of my command, I'm going to add the user, my username and group name, which I use dbadmin for those. So they're -U for dbadmin, and then -G for the group, and then my default home directory, which is just going to be /home dbadmin. At this point, I could actually run it. Because I'm on a VM, it's going to flag several things as it does the checking of Vertica for all of the OS settings. So I'm going to add one additional option here. Additional option is the failure threshold. So that one, you're going to see the warnings that'll come by. It'll identify several things, mainly because we're on a VM and not all of the kernel settings apply to this specific environment that I'm on. So at this point, it's ready to run the command. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and then it needs the password for the root password for the other 2 nodes. And now you can see host number 2, the second node, is being installed now. So it's moving the RPM to that node, doing the same installation that we just did. So it's starting to form the cluster at this point, and it'll repeat for node 3. And this command works whether I'm on a single node, if I have 3 nodes, if I had 30 or 50 nodes, I would use that same command, and it would take care of installing across all of those nodes in a cluster. You can see that node 2 just finished. Now it's starting to install on node 3. You can see the messages I mentioned earlier. We set that failure threshold to halt. You can see these different messages that are appearing, and mainly these are due to the virtual machine. But what's really nice, when Vertica does the installation checks, you're provided with a web address right to the documentation page for that specific message. So if I go up here and I want to look at one of these, there's the URL in the documentation page and how to set that particular parameter on your OS. So those you can continue through fixing those on all the different nodes until they're none of those exist any further. But these are all documented. You can see the same messages appeared on each of the cluster members. At this point, everything's installed. The next step is really creating the Vertica database. So I'm going to exit out of this, out of root. I'm going to run the admin tools, which is our CLI command interface. Now keep in mind, this utility, as well as others, you can do a lot of things just from the command line. And then we also have a management console that lets you do some of the same things through a web interface. So depending on what you're familiar with and your favorite way to manage the system, all of those are provided for you. Because I'm on the Community Edition, I don't have a Vertica license, so I'm going to just press Enter at this screen. And I'm going to hit the down arrow and accept the license agreement. Okay, and this is the utility. So there's no database here that's defined. You can see at the top of the screen it shows me the version of Vertica that I'm currently using, which is the 9.002. I want to create a database. I'm going to go to the configuration menu, and the first option here is create database, and I simply supply the database name here. And then any additional comments that I may want to put with this database. Just going to go ahead and press enter. Then I'm going to enter my password for the database. And you can see the three nodes that we just installed the software on appear here in the list, and they're all marked. So they're this database will be distributed across all 3 of these cluster members. And you may ask why 3, and that 3 is the minimal node count for redundancy. So if one of the nodes were to fail, I can still operate the cluster with just the 2 remaining nodes, and no data would be lost. And then press enter. And this is the location of where I'm going to store the data files. So I created a volume called database. So this is a Red Hat ext4 file system. Then go ahead and press enter. Then I'll press enter one more time, and now it's actually building the database. So it'll start. It'll jump start it on this particular node and then replicate out to the other 2 nodes. And you'll see messages here along the way as it progresses. And now we're in the startup mode, so startup phase. So each node is now going to be started at this point. You can see all 3 of the nodes are currently down. And you can see all 3 nodes just came up. So some of the additional packages are being installed right now. You can see the list here as it scrolls through them. So flex tables, machine learning, each of these they're they're all included in the RPM. It's just executing the package installed into this database. Okay, everything just finished. So it's successfully created. I want to show you, go back to the main menu, so I can hit M for main menu. And on this very first option, when you run admin tools, you can come in and check the state of your database. So if I just press return, you can see that VDB was the database that I just created. You can see that all nodes are up for this database. So if one of the nodes were to be shut down, I could see that here. It would show me each of the individual nodes and the one that was down. What I really want to do is I want to take this database that I just created and I want to import it into our management console. I want to look at the web interface and kind of show you what that can do. So let's look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the management console. Okay, and you can see here a screen that shows you some of the new features in Vertica 9 that are included in the management console. So I'll just click OK on this. And on the right-hand side here, I want to import a Vertica database. So I was going to click on this second button, and I need to put in the IP address of this new cluster. And it doesn't matter which node. I've got 3 different IP addresses, so I'll just give it the first one. And click the next button. Okay, it's going to ask for a unique API key. This is part of the installation. It's set for you when you install it. So in this message, it'll show you the actual location of that API key. So I'm just going to copy that and then go over to my my installation and then just paste that back into this screen. And clicking the continue button, it'll come up and want the username and password for the database that I just created. So the admin password, that was dbadmin was the username. And then click import. And then this takes a few seconds and that cluster will be visible here in the management console. Confirmation message that it was successfully imported. Okay, and you can see there's clusters. It shows me the clusters here, and then database. Both of these are managed now inside of this web interface. So if I want to look at one of these in more detail, I can just click on one of them and then go to View. You can see this visually shows me the 3 different members of my cluster. It also shows me hardware information and when this was last updated. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to click on database to actually go and monitor this database. So here we go. There's these are all, some of these are customizable with what you want to see on them, but this is just the dashboard. So it shows me CPU utilization, disk utilization, a lot of really nice features in here. Some of the new things we can do now in the management console is we can execute queries. So along with monitoring it, the database designer is built in here, and then query execution, where I can go in and just simply execute a simple SQL statement. So maybe look at all my nodes of the cluster. Select star from nodes. There we go. So you can see the node name, the node ID, and then the status of those. So I mentioned earlier admin tools, you could see the status of your clusters. You can do that in SQL. There's also command line options to do that as well. outside of these different tools. So at this point, everything is up and running. At this point, my next step would be to go ahead and load data into this database. So maybe I already have some data that I want to look at. The data could be external, through a flex table, Orc or Parquet file. I may have a CSV file that I want to load. There's also, inside of the Vertica directory, there's a samples directory where you can have data generated for you and you can load it. So that really, the Management Console has thresholds, so you can look at different thresholds within the database and have automatic notification, and they can be through email